Ockerna Lima Romeo depart VFR on course, fly runway heading, departure frequency 119.
In this tutorial, we're going to show you how to set up the NFS Cirrus Throttle for both Microsoft 2020 and also XPlane. So, starting with Microsoft 2020 within the default welcome screen, if you go up to Options, and then select Controls, you'll see all of the controls that are connected to the PC. We're going to be working on the Cirrus Throttle, and you'll see that there's nothing here. That means that nothing has been assigned. So, if you need to change the filter to all, and that shows the different commands that can be assigned. And we will start first by the throttle. And if you search for throttle axis, there's only one option, and that's the one that you want. So if you click on the gray box beside it, hit start scanning, and then if you move your throttle on your hardware, it should register as joystick slider X. And you're going to validate. Now you need to reverse the axis in order for it to function properly. And even though it looks, when you move it to idle, it goes all the way up, and when you move it to full throttle, it goes all the way down. It looks backwards, but that is actually the way that the aircraft recognizes our hardware. The next we're going to search for is mixture. And we're going to use mixture 0 to 100%. So mixture axis 0 to 100%. There's a lot of different ones, but this is the one that you want. So we're going to click on the box. Same thing, start scanning, and you're going to move your mixture axis, and it should register as joystick slider Y. Validate, and this one too needs to be reversed. All right. And the next we can search for is flaps. Now for the buttons, the easier way to set these is to just know the commands that you need. So for flaps, it can be a little confusing because there's decrease, extend, increase, retract. What we want are decrease and increase. And for decrease, we need to set that to number 2. So go to select input, go to number 2, validate, and then for increase, you need to set that to number 3, and validate. So then the flaps are done. The next one is going to be your fuel selector. And we're going to search for fuel selector 1. And we want fuel selector left, 1 off, and 1 right. Okay, so fuel selector 1 left needs to be set to button number 5. Fuel selector 1 off needs to be set to button number 4. And then fuel selector 1 right needs to be set to 6. And then the fuel pump, we need to set this in 3 different places. We need to set the toggle fuel pump. We're going to set this to 7. We're also going to set it to 8. And then down here for toggle electric fuel pumps, we're going to set that to 9. And I'll show you why in just a second. So now everything has been set on the throttle except for the takeoff go around button, because remember this gets set within the NFS throttle, I'm sorry, the NFS G1000 software. So we're going to apply and save. And now I'll show you how this is actually working in a flight. Alright, so now that we're in the cockpit, we can look down at the throttle quadrant to make sure that everything's working the way it's supposed to. So our throttle, full throttle, and idle. Mixture goes all the way rich and all the way lean. Our fuel selector, if you go to right, left, or off. Now there's not a command for the left sided off and the right sided off, so it all goes down there to the right sided off. The flaps should just move one at a time. And then when you move them all the way to the top, they should go up. Now this is what I was talking about with the fuel pump. There's only a command, or the hardware command will only work the prime position. So if you go up to the boost position, it's actually going to take it to prime. And when you go to the middle, it sends it to off. And then when you go down to prime, it goes to prime again. I'm not aware of a command in Microsoft 2020 that allows the hardware to control the boost section, but that, as far as the aircraft is concerned, that doesn't matter. And again, the most important thing is your muscle memory of turning the fuel pump on and off anyway. So that looks like everything is working properly. The next part of the video is going to be showing you how to get everything configured within XPlane. Now that we've assigned the commands for Microsoft 2020, now we're going to show you how to do that in XPlane. Now most people who are using XPlane are going to use the TorqueSim SR20 or SR22, and the way that that aircraft was built, the fuel selector and fuel pump needs to have special firmware in order to function properly. So within our instructions, there's a link to download the alternate firmware, and if you download it and run it on your PC, it will automatically load the bootloader. And just wait for it to update, and it says the bootloader is stopped. Press enter, and then it's completed. You're going to want to unplug the throttle and plug it back in to recycle it. And then to make sure that everything is working the way it should, you can search for USB game controllers, search for the throttle, and in the properties, you should check and make sure that everything's working the way it's supposed to. You should not have to do a factory recalibration. Anytime you move the fuel selector counterclockwise, it should pulse a 4, and a clockwise motion should pulse 5. Okay, and then the fuel pump, the one different thing about that is when you go to the prime position, it pushes and it holds down button number 7. And the boost should send to number 6, and then going back to the middle pulses a 7. So this is working properly. So we're ready to open up XPlane. Now that we're within the welcome screen of XPlane, in the settings, if you find the Cirrus Throttle, it'll show that it needs to be calibrated. So you're going to calibrate now. You're going to move the throttle and the mixture all the way up and down. You don't have to worry about leaving them in the centered positions. That doesn't have any effect. And then hit finish. So now that it is calibrated for XPlane, axis number 1 you're going to set to throttle. And like Microsoft 2020, this needs to be reversed. Okay, and then axis number 2. When I'm referring to the numbers, I'm talking about the blue because that's actually how it's assigned. Don't let the gray text confuse you. This one's going to be set to mixture. Okay. Now, one thing that we do have to do before we're able to set the TorqueSim specific controls is we have to actually load a flight with that aircraft so that it gets started and it actually loads it up. If you don't load a flight first, the controls are not going to be there, and that's an area of confusion. So once you have the aircraft loaded, you're going to go to the settings, and again you're going to find the Cirrus Throttle. Now we've already set the throttle in the mixture. Button number 1 is the takeoff go around button. Okay, so again, that's set within the NFS Cirrus, the NFS G1000 software, so it's not set within XPlane. Button number 2 is going to be flaps up, and we want to do flaps up a notch. Button number 3 is going to be flaps down a notch. Button number 4, this is a torque sim specific, so if you close down all of the menus, you're going to search for AFM, SR, CMD, and you want that to be set for fuel. You want that fuel selector left. Okay, so AFM, SR, CMD, AP under the fuel, that's fuel selector left. Okay, number 5, we're going to do fuel selector right. For number 6, under switches, you want fuel pump up, boost. And then lastly, number 7, you're going to want switches, fuel pump down, prime. Okay. If you are not using our software and just using the throttle quadrant standalone, you can set the takeoff go around button. Autopilot go around right here. All right. So now we can look down and make sure that everything is working the way it should. So fuel pump, should hold prime, middle, okay, so the fuel pump is working right. Then a clockwise turn of the fuel selector should good, of counterclockwise, yep, good. Now if your fuel selector is out of sync with where it should be, you just have to turn it all the way to the one side or the other to get it back. And then the flaps should only go down one notch. And it is. All right, so everything is working the way it should.